Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening. We're just getting this call started, so please be patient with us as we admit folks into the waiting room. And if you're a speaker on this call, please do raise your hand.
Unless there are any questions, I'm not seeing anything in the screen. Any questions around that? I just wanted to share with you all sort of an organizational update from our part that we now know that ICSS, International Civil Society Support, which has been the birthplace and the home of GFAN throughout its existence to date, will be closing its doors by the end of November of this year. So effective this Friday, October 16th, GFAN is going to be temporarily housed at the New Venture Fund, who is an organization based in the US. It's a not-for-profit that we've worked with in a number of different ways over the years, and this is the kind of administrative sort of hosting arrangement that that they do in different matters. And we'll do that for a period of, we hope, no more than 6 months, so that by April 15th we are settled in a new sort of more permanent hosting partnership arrangement with a different organization. So Tara, Siva, and myself will continue to work on GFAN work. The good news is that we still have strong funder support for the time being, and so we are full speed ahead in terms of the work that we are trying to do and to continue working with all of you and with other allies and partners, even though right now there's a bit of a disruption, I guess, administratively. And you know, of course, on a personal note, of course, it's very sad, the news about ICSS, but we're hoping that with all of you and with our other strong partners and allies that we'll, you know, use this as an opportunity to move forward, to rethink, and to come out of this stronger and better. So I just wanted to make sure that we had shared that update with you all on this call. And if there were quick questions, we're happy to take them. But also just wanted to make sure that in addition to the note that we had sent around on the listserv, that we were also sharing that with you all today. So are there any questions about that? I'm just trying to find the chat. No, okay. That's great. So, and thank you for all of you who've expressed your support through this, and we'll keep all of you as our membership and as our partners up to date in terms of where things are going with the changes organizationally here at GFAN. Okay, so then, you know, back to our agenda, then our first speaker is going to be Hannah Grant from the Global Fund Secretariat, who is working on the strategy process. Now, one of the things that we had tried to do was to sort of schedule this so that we had Hannah on today's call, and then in 2 weeks' time we've sent out a save the date for a call with the leads of the strategy committee around the strategy process. Unfortunately, we just found out that that call is not going to be able to go forward as planned on the 22nd, but we are working to figure out what we might be able to do for that call instead and related to the strategy. So we will come back to you all with that, but we were trying to get a kickstart us all on the process of the strategy and what's happening in some of the key milestones, so that then we could, over the next few weeks and months, continue to have conversations as GFAN to hear from colleagues and partners what they're contributing to the strategy process and what we as GFAN want to contribute to the strategy process together. But that said, we will figure all of that out. That was just a sequencing idea that we had in terms of trying to make sure we were sharing with all of you and facilitating sharing information with all of you about what is happening with the strategy process. So, but without further ado, I will hand it over to Hannah, and I will stop sharing my screen so that Hannah is able to share her screen, or Tara can for Hannah. And Hannah, I'll just pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Katie, and hello, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. It says there's disabled participant sharing of screens. Are you, Katie or Tori, are you able to share the slides from your end?
I can also just make you a host. I'm just overwhelmed with people trying to get into the call, and I'm trying to find you, and your name disappeared on me. So if you just give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
I will.
No problem. While that's let me know when it's working, and I'll just kind of get started. First of all, just to say thank you so much for having us to discuss with you all today. We really appreciate GFAN as partners in the strategy development process, and also really value all of your input and perspectives in helping take forward the strategy development process. So we really do appreciate the time today. So I'm going to start off giving an overview of the strategy development process, and then my colleague Shanti from the strategy development team is going to walk us through the partnership forums work, and it's with a special focus on early ideas on the content for the partnership forums, especially the agenda, topic groupings, breakout groups, meaningful engagement. And then what we would love from you is to hear your feedback and ideas and how we can make this work better. So that can be teed up and refined in what is presented with the board in November. So I think I can share my screen now.
You should be able to go ahead.
Can you see my slides? Oops, no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes,
perfect.
yes, we can see it here. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So as you're all pretty much familiar with now the strategy development process, the 2-year process over this year and next year. I think one of the times we were last discussing, it was around the launch of the open consultation, which was launched across the partnership in May. And we're now in the brilliant position where the first round of input has come in by the 1st of September. And we've synthesized it and it's been discussed with the strategy committee. So that synthesis is being translated into French, and both the English and French versions will go on the strategy development website by the end of the month. But I wanted to first of all say thank you, because there's been a tremendous amount of input received to date. I think more than 250 responses by individuals and groups representing many of the consultations that you've all been doing. And I think if you look over the contributors, it's at least, I think, 57% were from communities and civil society. So clearly this group has done an amazing job at mobilizing people and colleagues across the partnership to input into it, the open consultation. So sincere thank you there. So with that initial synthesis from the open consultation, and also some key final bits of evidence coming in through the end of the summer months, that's the TURG SR 2020, the midterm review of the current strategy, and then the TRP's recommendations for strategy development. What was able to happen is that we were able to discuss this with the strategy committee in actually last week, and then it's going to feed into a series of discussions over the coming few months between the strategy committee and the board, to start to give their early steer on some kind of more foremost topics among the strategy development topics, and to give their perspectives on the future role of the Global Fund on RSSH, on global health security, and ways that the partnership model can be refined to strengthen impact at programme level. We know there's a number of other consultations continuing throughout this year and continuing to input into the open consultation. So by the end of this year, all of this kind of input, the evidence, will feed into the partnership forums that Shanti will discuss with you in a minute. And as you very well know, the partnership forums are the opportunity for representatives from across the partnerships to come together to reflect on the input and evidence and start to suggest potential areas of future strategy focus and aims. So the idea is coming out of the partnership forums at the end of Q1 next year. The strategy committee will be able to develop a framework which will be approved by the board in the middle of next year, and then the final strategy at the end of next year. And I did just finally want to say, we do still very much encourage your input, especially those that haven't contributed yet through the open consultation, based on all the discussions that will be continuing through the end of this year. And all input received by the 1st of December will be used to inform the preparations and the topics to be discussed and the background materials for the partnership forum. So we do really continue to really appreciate all of your input there. So I'll stop here and then hand over to Shanti, who is going to talk us through especially some of the content preparations for your input for the partnership forums.
Thank you, Hannah, and hello everyone, and thank you so much for having us on this call. So to start with the partnership forum, the steering committee has just approved the different dates of the 3 regional partnership forums, as well as the fact that we will have a global opening and closing, opening at the start and a closing at the end. And the idea of the opening and closing is to create a common thread across the partnership forums to build momentum, but also to close with common discussions and concurrence around the strategy recommendations. So the partnership forums are going to take place in Q1 with ICA-LAC from 9 February to the 11th, then Africa and part of MENA 17 to 19 February, and then Asia and the other part of MENA in 3 to 5 March. Next slide, please. So to look at the illustrative topic groupings, as Hannah just mentioned, all the input we're receiving is being synthesized and will continue to inform the topics and the topic groupings for the partnership forum. So what you see here is the emerging topics that we currently see, but it's important to note that these will still change. And the other important thing is to note that the agenda will ensure flexibility to address the interlinkages between the topics, but also new topics that emerge during the partnership forum discussions. So the way we're looking into structuring it at the moment and considering to do it is to first talk about defining our focus topics. So these are the ones you're seeing at the top. So it's delivering against the 3 diseases, then integration and systems for health, adapting to a changing environment, which also includes global health security and climate change, and then equity, human rights, gender, and the most vulnerable. And it's important to note here that this will also, of course, be discussed as a key part of all other topics. Then the second part is achieving our goals. So how are we going to achieve the focus that we'll define on the top? Strengthening program impact by country context, partnerships to support effective implementation, then resource mobilization and sourcing operations. So that's the overview as it looks like at the moment. And again, this will continue to evolve. Then the next slide, yes. Looking at what it means for the program, focusing on the middle of the slide first, as it leads from the topics. The regional partnership forums, so the 3 regional partnership forums, will consist of 3 separate days, and these will days be around 4 hours, more or less, to also accommodate the time differences. And given that it's a virtual format, this will not allow us to do full days. So the first day, we are thinking about doing an overview of the key topics for discussions, a summary of the input to date and the evidence we've been receiving. Also to have an IT, it's important to note that there will be also a full IT training for civil society participants and likely others in advance of the partnership forum, and I'll say a bit more about that later. And then the first day, the breakout groups will focus on these top topics at the first row. So really defining the role of the Global Fund and the regional priorities. Then on the second day, the breakout groups will focus on the what and the how of the bottom topics, so the achieving our goals topics. And we'll make sure to have some flexibility to discuss the interlinkages and emerging topics. And then on the third day, we'll talk about all of the 8 topics that we've seen at the previous slides to discuss what the recommendations would be for the strategy. Then the global opening will be in advance of the 3 partnership forums, and all participants of the regional forums will be invited to participate. So this is really to open and look at where do we stand at the moment in the global context, 10 years to go into the 2030 goals, and also, of course, the implications of COVID-19. Then the closing at the end of the 3 partnership forums is really to reflect on what's been coming up at all the regional forums, what are the emerging topics, and what does it mean for our response going forward. And next slide, please. Of course, a virtual format brings a lot of challenges, but also can bring opportunities. So we're really aware that we need to make sure that there's meaningful participation of all participants. So the way we're thinking about this is three ways. So the first pillar is preparation and wide engagement during the run-up to the partnership forum. So besides the consultations, nice arrows, it's the pre-meeting. We will have pre-meetings for communities and civil society, and these will be held much further in advance than was the case in previous partnership forums. And this will give people the time to discuss, to strategize, but also to go back to their constituencies to talk about the partnership forum and then come to the partnership forum very much prepared. So they will roughly take place around 3 weeks before each partnership forum. Then there will be evidence packs shared in advance, and of course the global opening and closing. Then during the meeting itself, we'll make sure that there's IT support and also supporting participants that need internet connection. So we're currently exploring the ways in which we could be supporting that. Important things are, of course, also a safe space environment, also online, translation and interpretation during the session. And then there's also facilitating increased collaboration through innovative tools. So for example, we will be having topic booth where participants can gather together on specific topics, call on expertise and call on documents and exchange, and also book a room to have bilaterals. Next slide, please. So a couple of key questions that we'd like your feedback on. Based on your experiences in previous partnership forums or other forums you've been engaging in, is the approach that we have for structuring the sessions and structuring the program an effective way to bringing in the partnership voices, and are any other approaches that could be considered? And the second question is, what other ideas and best practices could you share in terms of supporting meaningful engagement, and especially when it's now a virtual format? Great, so now opening up the floor for comments, suggestions.
Thanks, Shanti. Sorry, I'll start my video again. It's Katie. So thank you very much for that presentation. Could I ask you maybe to go back to the previous slide so that we can have sort of some of this in front of us while we're asking questions? I think this information is new for many people. So we'd like to welcome everyone to raise questions. You can put something in chat, but also could you please use the hand raise function. I'm seeing a quick question around LAC and ICA and whether they're still together or at different times. So that would be a starting off question. And then I'm also seeing a hand raised from Sophie. So why don't we structure ourselves to take 2 or 3 questions at a time, and then go back to you, Hannah and Shanti, and then come back to the group. So the first question being about ICA and LAC, whether they're still at the same time or whether they're separated. And then Sophie, if you wanted to unmute.
Hi, thanks, Katie, and thanks everyone for the presentations. Just responding to the question about, how could we be doing this differently, or what should we be doing? One of the comments that we've been getting quite systematically from Women for Global Fund advocates is the need to be doing this in person. For many people, the virtual it's just, not only is it a barrier, but it's just not the way they're able to communicate with each other. And so, is there any way, or have you explored doing some smaller community discussions that can happen in person? Or is there any way that the Global Fund Secretariat would be able to support something like this if there were networks who wanted to do that? Because we've just seen, from the input that we received, it was a lot easier to get input from the Global North than it was to get from the Global South. And our assumption is that it's just a different way of communicating. And our concern is that you may not get the voices that you need. So just, wondering if you've had those thoughts as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Sophie. So if we could go back to you, Hannah and Shanti, for first responses, and then we have some other hands raised. And just a reminder, if you have raised your hand, to try and lower it when you are completed your question. So Hannah or Shanti?
So thank you for both those really important points. And kind of on ECA and LAC, yeah, they will be kept together because the idea of the partnership forum groupings was that there's the opportunity to share common challenges on common areas of focus. But of course, recognizing there are different time zones, what we will do is we will hold some sessions separately in terms of time zones so it works well, but certainly bring the discussions back together at key points so there is a good exchange of ideas. And Sophie, on the point about the challenges of not being able to be in person, we absolutely hear that, and I think it's with quite considerable disappointment that we aren't able to hold the partnership forums in person. We have kind of done thorough assessments, including in view of the timeline of effective vaccines and therapeutics, and it's just, we're just not in a position to be able to guarantee, obviously, the safety of participants getting together in a common space in this environment. We have heard a lot that the importance of kind of supporting local community groups to give their input, and I know that's something that's kind of been very front and centre of the minds, especially of some of our constituencies, as they've been trying to get input into the open consultation. So I think for now, I think anything that we can all do to help get kind of grassroots input into the open consultation as a means of that being synthesised to inform the partnership forums, or indeed participation and just in the partnership forums, and then anything that we can all do, and any thoughts that you have are just so welcomed about how we can, given that it's going to be done in a virtual setting, what we can do to better engage people. Back to you all.
Okay, so we do have a couple of other hands raised, so I'm going to go to them first. So there's Kana and then Mick Matthews. So Kana, can we hello and go ahead, and then Mick after Kana, and then we'll come back to you both for responses.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah and Shanti and Hannah, for the previous question and for the presentation and clarity on the partnership forums. My quick question is just around the CRG platforms, because they are part of the Global Fund processes, and in a lot of the presentations or engagement, the role of the partnership platforms is not usually clarified, or it's missing from that engagement. So any clarity on what would be the role of the CRG platforms within these processes would be great. Thank you. Over.
Thanks, Kana. Mick?
Yeah, thanks. Let me just clear my screen a minute. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the support for connectivity part, because I mean, for sex workers and people who use drugs, I think bandwidth is a problem in engaging in something virtual, and I just wonder how you see, I mean, it says in brackets funds to support internet or phone access, and you also mentioned IT training. I just wonder how that's going to work. How would we ensure that the sex worker community, for example, can take advantage of that to enable them to participate in the virtual format? Thanks.
Great. So over to you, Hannah or Shanti, for some quick thoughts and responses.
So maybe I'll start with Kana's point and then go, and then Shanti will pick up on Mick's good points. So for the CRG platforms, I don't know if any of our CRG, if Kate's on the line, so she should definitely jump in if she is on the line. The platforms, as also with GFAN, are critical kind of inputs into the process. So they're being engaged in key points. So, for example, requesting input into the open consultation, to nominate participants for the partnership forums, and to continue to kind of to give feedback and input into the process as we go along. I think also through the constituencies too as a channel. I don't know if Kate's here, if she wants to add anything else. Okay, so maybe then I'll hand over to Shanti to Mick's point.
Thank you, and thank you, Mick, for that important question. Yes, support for connectivity is a key thing that governance is working on together with CRG. We've been speaking to some of the civil society delegations as well on this, and CRG is following up on some of the best practices they have suggested in terms of how to how to even reach people with support and how to support them. Like ideas that have been going around but haven't been confirmed are like dongles or offering a phone connection, but also whether, if at all, it can be safely done to bring people to regional spaces where they could safely participate. So there are different ideas being explored, and it's definitely one of the key focuses. And we are very much welcoming any of your experiences and good practices that you could be sharing with us for us to further explore. So it would be really grateful for any ideas.
Thank you. And just quickly before you move on, Kerry, just something that Hannah said that has worried me. You said that the platforms were making nominations for the partnership forum. How is that happening? When is that happening? Why is that happening? And how come the rest of us don't know about it? Or at least Input and NSWP don't know about making nominations to attend the partnership forum. It seems a little bit in advance of things. I would like some clarity on that one, please.
So Mick, I'll just have to double confirm. I'm just trying to go to my email at the same time. But I think the launch for request of nominations for the partnership forums is only just, I think it only just came out from the Secretariat, and it's starting to trickle down through all of the different networks. So, and I can double check, if actually I have to stop sharing my screen so I can go into my email, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be cascaded down the request for participant nomination.
Can I respond quickly?
Oh, thanks, Linda.
Hi, this is Linda. So the process is that we have sent out yesterday a call for nomination, and that would be a process for the next 4 weeks. And then from that, we will then look at the applications. So the platforms are not going to nominate people. The process is that we are sending out an open call for nomination for all civil society partners. And there's a link in that open call where people will do a self-nomination or a third-party nomination. And then based on that, that will be sent to the Secretariat, and you will sift through the applications. It's not going to be done by the platforms or even the GFund platform. It's going to be sent directly to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just put in the chat box too, just to say that the process for nominating to attend, whatever the right word is, to attend the partnership forums was shared just yesterday over the GFAN listserv. So we'll make sure that that information is in the notes, and Tara shared a link in the chat where you should be able to find some more information. So so hopefully that helps, but you haven't necessarily missed it yet. It's only been shared quite recently. Are there any other, sorry, I'm just double checking the line to see if there's any other questions or hands raised. I do have a question myself, so maybe I'll just use my privilege in terms of moderating. Could I ask you just to go back one more slide to the one that sort of shows some of the timelines, and back again, I think. Yeah, that one. The one with the dates for the different partnership forums. One of the issues that I remember from the last sort of strategy development process, however many years ago now, was the timing between the different partnership forums and the impact that had in terms of where ideas were consolidated, in terms of input that was provided, and how that, you know, sort of fed forward through the different partnership forums. There was certainly a sense that, you know, and I'm not going to remember what the order was last time, you know, but there was certainly a sense that one of the earlier partnership forums kind of set the tone for the rest of the partnership forums, and that a lot of the documentation and stuff was kind of, I don't want to use the word baked in, but I think that's the best one that describes it, at least describes the concerns that that's what happened last time. The timelines are much shorter this time in between the partnership forums. So I think, you know, that is not really going to be as much of a concern this time, but I wondered if you could speak to, you know, what the communication process is between the different partnership forums to sort of share back what's happened at the subsequent ones to the ones that were earlier, so that all of the participants from the different partnership forums can all participate in that closing, and also whether during that sort of global closing, whether there's an opportunity to really dive into some of the more maybe controversial areas or areas where there's more disagreement. So just wondering if you could speak a little to that. I hope that that question is clear. And if there are any other final questions, please just let us know in the chat and raise your hands. Otherwise, after you guys have a chance to respond to that question from me, as well as sort of some final comments from you, then we'll move on in terms of our agenda. So Hannah, Shanti.
So thank you, Katie. That's a really good point. And that was, I think, when the lessons learned were done from the last time, this is one of the big things that came out. So definitely this time, every effort will be made to ensure that these 3 partnership forums have equal importance. I think if there's lessons learnt in how we've conducted them, that will be carried through, but certainly one will not set the tone for the other. You notice there's a short time frame between all of them, but the materials will all be actually done very much in advance, and all set up all ready to go. So there won't be that. We will do everything we can to make sure there isn't that situation going forward. But exactly as you say, in the global closing, that's when we will bring all the recommendations together, and we'll probably have rapporteurs come from 3 meetings to discuss their recommendations that came out of their meetings, and discuss how that can be brought together as some global recommendations. But certainly not going to be kind of having one set the tone over the others. Shanti, I don't know if there's anything you want to add in.
No, that's very well described, and I think that the guiding principle is that all these forums are equal, so all participants should have an equal opportunity. So in the guiding principle, as we evolve the design further, it's really that they're set up in principle the same way, and then everyone gets the same opportunity and the same partnership forum, with, of course, a little bit of flexibility to discuss any regional nuances or issues.
Okay, thank you. And I assume that we can, oh, Philip, I'm just seeing your hand raised now. Go ahead. I think you'll need to unmute, Philip. I'll try to unmute from here, but I'm no longer allowed to do that. So Philip, we can't hear you if you're trying to ask a question. If you can put it in the chat, please go ahead and we'll try and get you the answer before the end of the call. So I just wanted to now hand this over. Thank you, Hannah and Shanti, very much for the very clear slides and the very clear descriptions. Really helpful to have a good sense of where things are going and what some of the key dates are. Feels like a long way away, but I know January will be upon all of us in no time at all. So looking forward to continuing to discuss with you over the next few months as we prepare for the partnership forums and of course the forums themselves. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Tara. I'm going to stop my video and I'm going to try and take care of the back end stuff, Tara, while you take us forward in the rest of the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Katie. I'm just going to see if I can start my video. Success. Got audio on one, video on the other screen, so hopefully this works and there's not a huge lag between my voice and video. We're now going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to shift over to talk about the results report that was released last month. But just before we do that, I just wanted to make sure to mention that a recording of this call and the slides that Hannah and Shanti presented will be made available after the call as soon as the recording has been processed. So just for folks to know, and then you'll be able to review these things as needed. So without further ado, I just want to welcome Melanie Brooks to the call. She's the manager of the editorial team at the Global Fund, and she's going to share with us some highlights. Melanie, do you have slides or anything like that?
I don't have slides, but I'd like to take you through the communications toolkit. So if I could share my screen, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Just give me 2 seconds. I have to do it from my phone. For some reason, it's being difficult for me. So I have to switch devices now. Hold on 1 second. And Melanie, make co-host. There we go. So you should be able to share your screen momentarily, and I will put myself on mute and you can go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. So can you guys see my screen yet?
It looks like it's just, there it is.
There it is. Beautiful, amazing Nambasa from South Africa smiling at you. Yes, no?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So the results report for this year, hopefully you guys have all had a chance to go through it. I'm just going to briefly go through the communications and social media toolkit because it's a pretty good way of going through the results and showing you what's available. Throughout all this, if you've got a question, if you have suggestions, please feel free to interrupt me. That's fine. And really want to hear from you guys to see what it is you found useful or you need more of. This year's results report was different than previous years because, of course, of COVID. So the majority of the results report was focused on the results from 2019, which were great, but then we had to include the impact of COVID-19, which is not so great. We've been using the projections from Stop TB, from UNAIDS, et cetera, saying that as much as double the number of deaths could happen in the coming years from HIV, TB, and malaria. We now know that hopefully that will be lower. It won't be worst case scenario, and part of that is because of the quick interventions that the Global Fund and many of our partners did. We'll be putting out more information on that now, but this was a moment in time, the results report. So everything we put out, we chose to frame it in, this was the amazing success that the partnership did, and it's at risk because of COVID. So this is meant to be an advocacy tool to show that we need sustained support for HIV, TB, and malaria, but we also need to fight COVID, not just because it impacts the three diseases, but because it's having a catastrophic effect. Quickly through the results report, you've got the overview. If you haven't seen these social media and communications toolkits, definitely encourage you to look at them because it's everything in one spot. You have a link to the full key messages and talking points, all of the results at a glance. Peter Sands as well did a 2-minute video, basically just explaining the results and the risk posed by COVID. He has lockdown hair in the video, so he looks kind of Dickensian, but he delivers an extremely powerful message. If you haven't seen that yet, I would strongly recommend it. The key results at a glance, I'm sure you all know this, so I won't take you through it, but the results in 2019 were impressive, particularly on finding missing cases of TB, and that one is one of the biggest ones that we're noticing is impacted this year. Case notifications across the board are going down because of lockdowns. This is set up in different sections, HIV, TB, malaria, the COVID impact, and down at the bottom, you've got all the multimedia resources. We did a number of different social media videos this year, and again, showing the lives saved and the impact on the 3 indicators, and showing how COVID-19 could reverse that. A lot of you have asked in the past for these kind of graphics. So this is actually a short film. It's only about 15 seconds that takes you through the progress and then the risk of COVID-19. If you need that in any different format or screenshots, please let me know and we can provide that. I'm gonna check, can you see, I just switched my screen. Can you now see a whole bunch of stuff on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. These are all the assets that you have available. So just so if you click on that link to download the assets, you go here. So there's a lot of just visual ways of presenting everything, short videos, social media tiles, the full key media, key messages, and talking points. And then, as you can see, this is the video of Peter that I love because his just looking particularly 18th century there. That's basically an overview of what we have available. The pickup this year in terms of media coverage was quite high. We got coverage in all major markets in key target media. This is different than previous years, and our social media coverage was also 2 or 3 times higher than it was even last year, and that was during replenishment. And the main reason for this, of course, is because we linked it to COVID-19, and you had the newsy angle of COVID-19 potentially throwing us back decades in the fight against HIV, TB, and malaria. I'm going to stop it there. Any questions, comments? Mick's got his hand up. Yep.
Oops, hold on. Yes, thank you for that and for the results. I suppose the question is not the content of what you're presenting so much. Well, it is a little bit. I just wonder why, you know, I know that COVID has an impact. I also know that COVID, under the auspices of global health security, is an excuse for expanding the mandate of the Global Fund. So I'll just put that out there because that's knowledge, we know that. But I just wonder why there is so much focus on COVID in terms of impacting results, but we don't ever see the Global Fund doing something, for example, as much on criminalisation of key populations, which has had a much, much longer term impact on the results that the Global Fund could have achieved than what COVID's having now. And yet we don't see that attention paid, and I'm just interested to know why, really. Thanks.
I think that's a really good point. And my response, and again, I'm in communications, but the one does not exclude the other. The impact of criminalization on the 3 diseases, particularly HIV and TB, is something that we should be focused on in addition to COVID-19. The impact that COVID-19 is having on the ground on the 3 diseases, if you're on the situation response, situation report list, you'll see the real-time impact that this is having. And anything beyond that, looking to the mandate of the Global Fund would be for leadership to respond to. But in terms of, is it right for us to respond to COVID-19 in line with our mandate? Yes, it is, because it's preventing us from delivering our mandate. Is it right for us to speak out and do something more in depth on criminalization and the impact that has on our mandate? Yes, it is. And that's a very good suggestion, and I'll take that forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Joya, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to go ahead with a question? And if anyone else has a question, please do raise your hand or put a note in the chat.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I just was looking at the website for strategy development, and it's fantastic. I'm Joya Mukherjee. I'm the alternate delegate for the developed country NGO delegation. This is just very clear, cogent. Thank you. Apropos to Nick's question and what you were just discussing, one of the things that our delegation has been looking at is to shift the language as part of strategy development from global health security to a language that's more about solidarity. You know, we worry that security is always going to have this connotation of lockdown, this connotation of control of contagion in a sort of us and them way. And so as we think about those 3 buckets of strategy, the resilient health systems, global health security, and the partnerships, we're really trying to think about how to reframe the global health security to take into account the importance of COVID, but so as not to have these kind of human rights violations as a central tenet. So I don't know if that's something that GFAN is interested in thinking about, but many of our colleagues felt that the security notion is a dangerous road to go down.
Thanks, Joya. Does anyone else have any other questions? I don't see any hands up in the chat or any other. Melanie, did you want to respond to that?
I'm not sure that one was mostly for me. That sounded like it was more directed to Hannah.
Yeah, and
No, it was to it was directed for GFAN as, you know, colleagues. You know, we've raised it also with Hannah and others, but I'd love to hear what GFAN thinks about that as well.
So maybe I can just pop in. It's Katie. Hi, Joya. Thanks. Yeah, I think that, you know, I've certainly been a part of some of the conversations where those issues around the language around security, global, you know, security, whatever the current terminology that people have landed on, and I think that that would be an ideal sort of conversation for maybe a focused conversation around that topic, where we could you know, look together as a community at the term and how it's being used and what the proposal is within the strategy process, and how that is showing up, and have that discussion to help inform you know, the delegation work at the board level in terms of the strategy, but the broader work that's being done around the strategy with all of the delegations. So certainly welcome that. If that would be a good conversation to have, I'd be happy to, you know, to have a conversation on that sort of specific issue. And if there are other problematic ones in the framing or ones where there are concern, we can absolutely work with all of you to set up some conversations, invite some, you know, I don't want to say experts, but you know what I mean, like people who are versed and who are thinking through some of these issues and terminologies and how they're being presented.
Thanks, Katie. Are there any other questions or comments on the strategy development or the results report that we have for any of our speakers? Not seeing any hands raised or anything. I'm just going to quickly put in a little plug then for our I've posted the link in the website and on our, sorry, in the chat for our website, where we're posting everything for the strategy development that we can get our hands on, and we're putting it up, and we're also looking for your input on that site. So I would encourage folks to submit their priority asks into our website so we can start to pull together a document that has what we're hoping is a living document to kind of review the collective civil society priorities for the new strategy. So please do have a look. The link is in the chat, and I will also post it with our call notes. And up there is also a calendar of events for the strategy committee, and for strategy development, sorry. And I'm trying to keep that updated as much as possible. So we hopefully will, I'll add in the new dates that came off the slides today, which was the opening and closing. But, and if there's anything else, Robin, I see you have a quick question. You're sneaking in there. Absolutely. Please do go ahead.
Thanks so much, Tara, and thanks to everybody for a fantastic call today and the terrific presentations. My question is to Melanie, just quickly, recognizing that we're coming up to a very important World AIDS Day. I mean, every World AIDS Day is important, but this one in particular because it's really rooted around the 90-90-90 strategy. I'm just curious, what is the media outreach communication plan to really push forward all of these terrific results that we're seeing, and the media toolkit that you have prepared? I think it is, you know, just having an eye also on the coming next replenishment, which technically is around the corner. What is the strategy, the communication strategy to keep these results front and center in mainstream media? Thanks so much.
Excellent question. We're working on that now. So the lead up to World AIDS Day obviously is we have to get started soon. We will be building on what we published in the results report, but we're also working with colleagues in the HIV team to see if there's new data. even though we know that the full 2020 data isn't going to be available, there are countries that are reporting, and there are indications in certain countries like Kenya where you've got an increase, anecdotal increase, although we are trying to get that data, in pregnancies, for example, teen pregnancies. And we know that when those go up, generally so do HIV infection rates. So we're trying to make those links and showing, again, although Mick, don't yell at me, making the link to COVID and the fact that the lockdowns have reduced, in particular, the prevention activities, and that's having a huge knock-on effect on the infection rates. So without having all of the data right now, that's the angle that we're going in right now. And if anybody has suggestions or wants to challenge that or has data that they've encountered, please let me know.
We could mention criminalization at the same time.
And criminalization, yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Mick, I'm coming to you for the information. You know that now.
That's absolutely fine.
So it's just a call out to say that, you know, GFAN is a fantastic resource, and there are advocates all over the world who are tapped into this. So
yes,
really welcome a second conversation together where we can help to push this out within our own media channels here in the different countries in which we work.
And actually, this one's for you, Mick. You're going to like this. So we have a series of videos that we're putting together right now on the Unite to Fight brand. So with that logo, and really focusing the attention on HIV, TB, and malaria, but also making the link to existing issues like criminalization, stigma, discrimination, GBV, and the impact that COVID-19 is having on that. One of those that we just finished filming, it was in Cameroon, and with a transgendered activist working on HIV. And so there's a lot of focus on criminalization, stigma, and discrimination. The other one related to HIV is out of Zimbabwe, and it's an adolescent girl who is speaking about the increase in GBV, especially around, I believe it's the gold mining industry. So it's really, again, everything links to COVID-19 because it's 2020, but it's showing how it's exacerbating already existing inequalities and issues like criminalization and stigma.
Great, thank you, Melanie. And I'm just checking the chat here to see if there's any further questions. I don't see any. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been a great call, I think. We did, as Katie started off on the call, we do have a reminder that we're still working on what the call on that was originally scheduled for October 22nd, how that's going to flesh out, but we will be in touch soon with details on what that call might be. So I want to again thank all of our speakers, Melanie, Shantif, and Hannah for their time and expertise on this. And please, if you have any additional questions that you weren't able to get in, or if you weren't able to unmute yourself, please do send them along, and we'll be happy to send them on, and hopefully we can get some responses. Melanie, I am just assuming that you would be happy to answer any questions. So, so again, thank you all, and have a lovely day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.